Hello, and welcome back to Unfiltered Tea Time with Little Dagger Aesthetics. I got rid of the wind chimes because I played it back and it sounded disgusting. So if anyone was a fan of that, you don't get that anymore because life is not fair. Um, Otherwise, this is episode 3. My name is Michelle. My pronouns are she, they, and we are going to be discussing something that was submitted into the forum on littledaggeresthetics.com. We have a little, what's it called, category, post, whatnot, that is asking what you would like to see or I guess hear discussed on the podcast. And this was submitted by one of our members. It is how to hone a skill and what changes Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ plus and women can make to the creative market. We've expanded a little bit, and we're just going to go through some questions we got and see different points of view. And today I have with me 3 friends who are great people. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, we can start with Jill.
Hello, my name's Jill. I go by she, they, and I am very excited to talk about what we're talking about today.
All right, Lidia?
Hi, my name is Lidia. I actually don't have any preferred pronouns, so anything works. And I'm also very excited to be talking about skills today.
Hey, and Noah.
Hi, I'm Noah. I go by he or him. As the other two, I'm very excited to talk about what we have today.
Aren't we all? It's going to be a good time conversing with friends. That's all I live for these days. All right. So to start with, question 1 is what does it mean to hone a skill? Anyone can pick this up.
I think the most literal definition is, to work on a skill to improve it to a point where it's comfortable or to a point where you're confident in it. I think it's the easiest definition.
Definitely, like kind of getting it to a point where you'd be proud to either show it or just satisfied in and of yourself with how you can do something.
I think more specific to the journey of quote-unquote honing a skill, I think it's, deliberate practice at whatever you're trying to do into better, like, whatever, like, techniques that is relevant to being good, quote-unquote, at whatever skill you're trying to practice.
Definitely. And can I just say the distinction between skill and talent, I think is really important in a conversation like this. Because people will often go off, like, especially in the creative field, I find, people will go to an artist and be like, oh my God, you're so talented. Meanwhile, the artist has put in years of effort and practice to hone that skill, and to have it written off as a talent, I think is a large injustice. So if we kind of want to talk about honing a skill, like talent plays a role in honing a skill, but skill in and of itself should be acknowledged and not written off as talent to people.
Just defining skills in general, I think, has always been an issue, because a skill can be anything. Same, it's just differentiating it from, as Jill said, like with talent or a hobby or something, because skills are so diverse, right?
Mm-hmm. So, what would you define as a skill versus a talent?
I think talent is what allows you to become really good at a skill. So like talent is your base ability that will either let you hone a skill quicker or like easier. But skill, anyone can achieve a skill. Like some people are born with like a natural talent. So like athletic ability, some people are born with just better hand-eye coordination. So learning a sport honing a skill of a sport will come easier to them because they have a natural talent. But someone with enough commitment and practice can get up to the same level of skill, I think.
I remember I was having a discussion at one point ages ago about skills versus talent. And I think the way I see it is almost like everyone's trying to climb a ladder, and being talented at something means you like start off on a step stool. So you start off ahead of everyone. and so you can climb to a higher height than most people who just, if everyone works at the same level and puts the same amount of hours in, you'll still be at a higher level because you had that step stool to start off with.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly that.
I think like talents or innate abilities are like they tend to be more general, and skills, like once they're very much honed in and you've developed like some kind of expertise, they tend to be more specific. So as Jill talked about a bit earlier, like you can have like general artistic talent, but when it comes down to it, like in order to become like a good artist, you still have to like hammer down like some very basic skills and have a very good foundation in order to make the most of your talent.
And I don't
Yeah,
think
that's pretty
you
fair.
have to. Sorry, I don't think you have to like be super into what you're talented with, if that makes sense. Like if I'm talented at sports, like my dad is a very sports heavy person, and I grew up with my brother playing a lot of sports. I never enjoyed sports, but I still have good athletic abilities. It doesn't mean, like, people can say I am talented at sports and physical activity and stuff. Does it mean that it is a skill that I enjoy, or a skill, or in that regard, that I enjoy, that I want to keep going forward with? No, but yeah.
I liked that little trail off at the end. It
I,
was like
I
giving
don't
a
know.
presentation.
Yeah, I'm not the best at explaining that. It's just it's a weird thing, because most people who are talented at something will most likely like pursue it.
Mhm.
But sometimes there is the odd case that it's not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
No, that's fair. That was explained pretty well. I just like the little trail off, because I was like, this is like a class presentation where you're like, so anyway, yeah, that's it.
The best finisher. So yeah.
Therefore, yes.
All right. We'll go to question 2, which is, what is a skill you have that you are proud of?
That's a good question.
The ability to throw together like a good PowerPoint presentation in under 4 hours.
Oh man.
Oh yes, admirable.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh man, I used to have this friend, and we were in the same class together in, I think it was first year, and she would party all night, and the same time, like, I'd be working on an assignment, 5 minutes or like an hour before the presentation is due, she
Yeah.
will crack open an energy drink, chug it, and write a beautiful essay within the hour and get a higher mark than me on it. And
That's
it's
sometimes.
that is just, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's you gotta adapt to your environment, and I've long enough in the government to realize that I have to do this. So, yeah.
Mhm.
I think a skill I'm pretty proud of is like interpersonal. As much as an introvert I am, I think I'm very personable, and
Mhm.
regardless of who I talk to, regardless of age, gender, whatever, I think I can hold a conversation pretty well, and be like almost like a confidant of sorts too.
Yeah.
And just being as closed off as I like to think I am, I'm really good at that part, or that skill at least.
I think that's a good skill to have, like especially when you consider like the impacts of like your social network on like virtually every aspect of your life. That is a very, very good skill to have.
Yeah. Well, like, just think about how important networking is nowadays. Like, nobody's finding jobs now. It's all networking. So the ability to like, hold a conversation and talk to people is, I think, honestly invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. Like,
Definitely.
Most job opportunities are not advertised. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
Mhm. How about you, Jill?
I think a skill that I've honed just over my life has been the ability to read people and kind of understand.
Oh, I think we're hearing a little bit of echo.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Try it again.
okay. I'll do a little clap so you can edit it. I think a skill that I've honed over my life is the ability to kind of read and understand people in like more than just a verbal way. Like it's gonna sound kind of silly, but like I can read people's vibe really well, and I can tell like when people are off, when people are feeling like good or bad. Like I'm good at kind of pinpointing and reading kind of a room as well as people. And I think kind of building off Noah's, like that does help me with interpersonal relationships and being able to kind of like see what type of person they are just by reading the vibe and then acting accordingly, or like bringing up something that I think they would like and usually being right about it. And yeah.
You are a human vibe check.
I am a human vibe check. Like I don't know how much copyright there was this, but Goose from Marvel movies, and it's a cat who like absolutely vibe checks people. I'm
true. It's a good skill to have, though.
I heard that, and I was just thinking, so your skill is making friends?
Well,
I think that's your cup of tea, Mitchie.
That is definitely yours.
Making friends and collecting your introverts.
Yeah, I can read people well. Doesn't mean I make friends with them well.
My only problem is I need people to open the door for me. That like first like hello has always been my thing, like approaching people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once I get that door open, then it really kicks in, if that makes sense.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that, considering your legendary entrances on Discord calls.
Okay, Discord calls are different mainly because it's just, it's over Discord. And I don't know, I've been using Discord since like grade 9, which is like eons ago, so I'm very comfortable. Like I have this like internal comfort zone with Discord, even though it's just an app, right? Whenever I see Discord, it's like I'm chilling with my friends. I can just goof around and be an idiot. But when I'm in real life, I'm like, they can actually see me, and like there are actual repercussions to me being an idiot online.
That's fair. That's fair. I definitely was thinking about this one, like, me making friends, I think I mean this in the best way, but I was thinking my skill that I'm most proud of would be my ability to sell things to people, because I truly believe that I can sell anything to anyone. Mind you, online is a little different and has really kicked my ass lately, but I've held a lot of jobs where my job was to sell a certain item to people. I've been a telemarketer and I've performed well, and I think that it started to translate over to me essentially being able to sell the experience of my friendship to people, and that's how I make friends easily. It's just essentially me being like, hey, if you're my friend, you can experience all these wonderful things. Here are my selling points. And they're like, you know what? That sounds good. I'm
telemarketer,
you crazy son of a bitch. I'm in.
But it's good. I think there's a rising amount of like introverted, like hermit people. Not hermits.
We're emerging.
But, like, there's like so many more introverted people than extroverted people. So to have someone who will like do what you do, Mitchie, and like collect introverts and introduce them all to each other, like your Discord server. The amount of people like I've met through them, like my crazy relationship with Tilly is absolutely
the best.
It's amazing, and it's entirely a joke. But I love that man, and I would take a bullet for that man, but I've never met him.
I really cannot wait until the day that you actually meet in person.
Oh man, it's gonna be like a day to remember.
Magical.
There's gonna be sparks in the air.
Yeah.
I just like to point out, like, through that server, I met my future roommates, so like very tangible benefits. Like, pretty happy about that.
Ay.
All because we have Billy Mays here with us. The friendship Billy Mays.
Oh my.
All right. On that note, we're gonna head to question 3. which is 2 questions. It's a trick. It is, how do you personally practice or master the skills you have, as well as what are some things people should do to hone their skills?
I
I
know.
was. Oh, sorry. You can go first.
I know a philosophy that I got throughout my childhood was actually from a book series called Ranger's Apprentice, and one of like the key things, one of the like the mottos of like the characters in the book was, archers practice till you get it right, rangers practice till you never get it wrong. And just that kind of philosophy I took and I tried to apply to like, I mean, I played volleyball growing up, and it was just constant drilling, not till I got something right, but till I couldn't get it wrong. And that has kind of stuck with me even throughout school, and like not being satisfied with just kind of getting it, but like getting it, like understanding it and being able to do something where I would be comfortable enough to like just go into it and do it without thinking, and like being able to have a clear mind and just like action. And that's kind of how I've personally like tried to master skills of mine. And then for advice for people honing skills, be kind to yourself and let yourself like recover if you fail. Because I struggled with like, I mean, I'm sure other people have, but like the whole perfectionist thing is, if I'm not good at it, I'm never fucking doing it again. And I had
feel
that
personally
throughout.
attacked by this.
Right? I know I'm not alone on this. Like, and just the being able to be kind to yourself and like allowing for failure, but not letting it ruin the passion that ignited you to want to hone the skill in the first place. Which I know is easier said than done, but like, just be kind.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that. I struggle so much with accepting failure and accepting that like failure isn't the end of the world, because I'm definitely that person where if things go wrong, even if it's out of my control, I always tend to come back to myself and I say, if only I was more prepared, if only I did this, if only I did that. And it's like sometimes things are just out of your control. Sometimes you do not have the capabilities to do something only in that moment. Because if you continue to try, you'll get to a point where you're better and better at what you're trying to do. Because again, practice makes perfect, or at least as perfect as you can be. Because there's typically no actual perfection in this world, but like you're gonna get better and better as you go, and it's very hard to convince yourself when you're in the moment, but once you start making that a regular thing, you'll be able to accept that a little mistake is not failure, and failure itself is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think something my dad taught me when I was a kid is that, and I've carried this throughout my 21 years, is that you can only do so much, and that comes like with anything. So it just plays into what you were saying, Michi. But like, for example, an exam that you have the next day, I study my ass off, and then the day before the exam, when it gets to the night, I stop, I just play games, because there's only so much studying you can do. And if you cram, I think there was a study saying cramming only works if you don't know anything prior. But the point is, you can only do so much, and then it gets to a point where you just know it or you don't. You're gonna succeed or you're gonna fail, and you just gotta be comfortable with that. But to answer the question, practicing, I was thinking about this a lot today actually. I think the biggest thing is actively thinking about it, because a lot of the time, at least for me, I'm kind of on autopilot. I'm not actively thinking of what I'm doing or saying. I'm just doing. And once you start actively thinking about it, it helps so much when you can like think out loud and think to yourself what stuff to do. I think streamers are a perfect example of this. Especially like in games like Dota or Apex, that I like Dota specifically, because it allows you to watch replays of your games But to sit and watch exactly what you're doing and you see what you do right and see what you do wrong and see it for yourself, I think is a really good skill. And going back to streamers, because they're entertainers, they have to talk to themselves and narrate their games the entire time. Sure, it doesn't improve the ceiling that you can reach to, but just if you're grinding from low MMR to high MMR, it's so helpful because even if you're just explaining something to whoever will watch, and by explaining, it's just like studying. When you're explaining something to someone and something you know inside and out, you understand it better. It's just like I had a buddy back in high school, and I'm terrible at history, but he would summarize World War II and the Cold War so stupidly funny, I would remember it and retain it like a snap of the fingers. He's like, this guy went to this guy, he shot this guy, everyone lost their shit. Hitler was like, kill all the people, da 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 da. And then it was hilarious. I remembered it inside and out now.
Yeah.
So if you actively think about it and you don't, actively think about it, not passively, and you find a good way to explain it, streaming or not, or just saying it to, anyone who will listen, really, I think that'll be a great way to hone a skill.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely like I've heard a lot of people say, when you're able to explain it to someone else, that's when you truly understand it. Even if the other person has to help you by filling in a couple of blanks here or there, when you're able to explain something, it's because you have finally wrapped your head around it and you remember at least 80 to 90% of it.
Exactly,
And that's definitely how I went about with sales work, right? With my previous example, a skill that I'm proud of is my ability to sell things to people. When I had my first telemarketing job, I was selling windows and doors. Shout out to that place. It was not a good place. But I would call people and they'd say, go according to this script. And according to the script, I made maybe 2 or 3 sales every 2 weeks. Once I started making it a bit more personal and talking to people the way that I created for myself and essentially honed, and I explained it to new trainees that we had, not only was I making more sales, but they were making more sales, like 3 or 4 sales per day. And it makes a whole difference when you're able to tell someone, this is what I do, this is what I understand, and this is what will help you, because it's just constantly refreshing it in your head.
Yeah. I think the term, I remember someone told me that there's a term for like actively thinking about it. It's like metacognition, I think is the word. But yeah, like just thinking about, like just for example, right now, instead of just me ranting about random stuff, I'm like, take a moment, be like, here's the points I want to get across. Here's what I've said that I'm really happy with them saying. And here's where parts where I'm not, like, kind of thing. It's hard to do, don't get me wrong. It's very challenging. But I think it's a really important aspect in honing and improving a skill.
I think, like, when I think about how I hone my skills, like, it kind of depends, like, what the end purpose of it is. Like, I have some quote-unquote skills that, like, I think, like, I just see as, like, they are a part of me, and there's no, like, real, like, end goal. I just have these skills because they are essentially, like, a part of my identity. Like, I consider myself to be, like, a visual artist. I, paint with watercolors. And, like, sure, I hone this skill by, like, routinely, like, actually painting and, like, doing my swatches, etc., etc. But it's, like, quite, I think, characteristically different than, like, how I approach, like, my courses. Like, I think, like, the practice is much more deliberate, and, like, I think like we've already talked a little bit to like the differences in like when you're practicing and you're just kind of like there versus like when you're practicing and like you're very like consciously thinking about like what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think one of the reasons that I do this is because like you only have like a certain amount of like mental energy that you can like expend in any given day. So you really do have to like pick and choose like the few things that are really, really important to you. And then, you know, you can still have other skills, but like they do have to kind of, you know, fall to the wayside a little bit and you just do them for like enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. That's very valid. There's definitely different approaches depending on what the end result is. And there's so many different types of skills that one approach isn't going to cover them all. And by adapting yourself, it definitely helps you understand what works for you in different situations, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think like the only other thing is that useful maybe that I've heard is, and I'm sure like everyone here has probably heard this, but like to like become like a quote unquote master, to, you know, really have a mastery in anything that you do, at the end of the day, like what you need to do is you need to put in 10,000 hours of like deliberate, thoughtful practice. So, you know, how you get there is like, it's really just up to you and whatever your circumstances are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also worth mentioning, you know, the age-old saying of practice makes perfect. Because, you know, the more time you dump into something, you're bound to get some decent results. But
So
also,
sorry.
no worries.
I was gonna say, like, I actually kind of dislike that saying. And the main reason that I kind of dislike that saying is because I think it was a high school teacher or something. And he was, you know, like, I went to like this kind of high-strung high school, like a lot of high overachievers, and a lot of us were like, you know, pushing ourselves very hard. We weren't getting like where we wanted to get, and he's like, look, I know that like you think if you just practice like indefinitely you'll get there, but it's not that practice makes perfect, it's that practice makes permanent. So whatever you practice doing at home is what you end up doing here. So if you're overworking yourself and what becomes your habit is, you know, you sit down in front of your chemistry homework and you start doing these questions and you zone out, you're going to start zoning out during exams too. So like if you are going to sit down and do your chemistry, like do it right, like focus the entire time that you're doing it.
Yeah, like quality of time versus quantity of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
work smarter, not harder. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
I like that there were like two more sayings put on top of
Yeah.
that.
Well, it makes sense though. Like I had this one teacher who would never say good luck. He'd always say good skill because luck was never a part of it. It's whether you know it or not. It's if you know, were ready for whatever was coming. But I think another big aspect that not a lot of people take into account when honing a skill is the burnout. If you spend hours upon hours grinding and working at something and you're not giving yourself that time to, you know, reset mentally or just, you know, take a break, I think you'll burn yourself out and you'll end up hating it. Like long story short, Borderlands, the game franchise, came out with Borderlands 3, I think a couple years ago, and it was like 7 years in the making or something. Everyone was looking forward to it. I pre-ordered it. First game I ever pre-ordered. I spent $100 on like the gold edition, everything. I beat that game in a day, less than a day.
Jeez.
I never want to play Borderlands 3 again. I just never want to touch it. It's not a fun game for me anymore. I ruined my own game because I burnt myself out so hard on it. And that's what a lot of people, yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's a lesson in not, if you grind at it for over and over and over, it's bound to backfire. You got to give yourself some break. You got to, you know, if you cook a steak on a stove for too long, it'll eventually burn. You got to take it off, give it time to rest. I don't think that's the best analogy, but I think it gets the point across.
It does, yeah. I think it ties back into the just be kind to yourself where you can.
Exactly. Yeah. You gotta forgive yourself. You can't. No one's perfect. I think, as Michelle said, you know, no one's perfect. There is, I don't think anything in this world that is perfect.
Perfection is an illusion.
Exactly. I
Just
think
be satisfied with
Okay.
yourself, and that's what
Exactly.
counts.
like I don't think I have. There's so you'll look outside your window and you'll see a unicorn. There's a 0.0 indefinitely 0.1 chance it can happen through some weird circumstances, but it's nothing is ever for certain.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. It reminds me of something like Ethan was telling me like a while back that there was some assignment that he had to do for like school when he was younger, where the teacher had a question that was like write down something that you know will happen like 100%, like for sure. It's impossible for it to not happen. And it was like the funniest thing. This is like really random, but he didn't write anything, and the teacher was like, well, there's like 100% chance that the sun will rise tomorrow. And he was like, technically no, like it's 99.9, but there is a very slim tiny atom-sized chance that the sun will not rise tomorrow. And as soon as he told me this, I started thinking about it, and because I'm an overthinker, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Because I was like, "There's so many things in my life that I think will happen for certain, and it
Right.
comes to taking things for granted and going back to thinking failure is the end of the world. Like I always was like, for certain, if I am fully prepped, if I am fully ready, if I am fully I have escape routes for every possible thing that could go wrong. It's still not 100% that it will go right. It's still not 100% that, everything just magically works out. And that's one of the things that I've had to remind myself, where it's like, no matter what, there is always a chance of failure, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Well-
I think the only thing that is really truly 100% is that we will all die someday. I think.
I was gonna say the old saying
Unless-
is death and taxes.
Yeah. Unless we magically find a way to be immortal, I don't think it's happening.
See,
there's
but
a
Then again,
that,
immortality is a curse, I think.
but with that, there's also like okay, not to like steer us off track here, but there's also different beliefs of death, right? Like
Mhm.
some people don't even believe that death is certain because you're
Yeah.
not dying, you're being reborn into another life, or you can be frozen and come back, or all sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, death of the physical body, if that counts, then.
Death of this mortal vessel.
Exactly.
I think the one piece of certain knowledge that I have been sort of utterly convinced is probably like the only statement that is in all cases necessarily true is by, our good old friend Descartes, I think, therefore I exist. Like it in and of itself proves itself. So everything else is like it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. But that sentence is like, yeah, that's a nice little grounding into this world.
Someone get Rhythm Bot in here for Everessence, Breath of Life.
Oh man.
Ugh. All right. Let's go to the next question because that was a trip. Back to our topics. We are on question.
We're on to number 4 now.
4, yeah.
4. All right. So question 4 is, what do you consider to be the creative market?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm excited to hear what you guys think.
Oh god. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think like colloquially speaking, like the cultural understanding of like what the creative market is it just seems to be like whatever falls under, small business, because when you think about it, like there's virtually like no type of business that does not require, some degree of like I don't know, creativity, right? Because like every business is, well, hopefully, okay, let's say most businesses are innovating, and regardless of, you know, under what category that is, it's, I think, in it of itself creative. But obviously, like, I don't think most people would be like, Walmart, it's a business, you know, this is a part of the creative market. So I think from a cultural perspective, most people consider this to be, you know, like, you know, the hyper small businesses with like maybe 1 or 2 employees, that sort of thing.
So I was thinking about this, and essentially, especially because I brand my business as a community for the creative,
Mhm.
I have had to think about this and put it into an actual definition. So
Right.
what I think creativity itself is anything that you apply your imagination to. And the creative market itself is the fact that literally anything can be creative the second you add your imagination to it. So the main thing that you see it in is obviously things like art, you know, when people are painting, drawing, sculpting, doing photography. But then you can also see it in things like in the media, like big name companies for filmmaking, going back to short films on YouTube for smaller creators. You can apply it to virtually anything that you can put an imaginative spin on and sell.
Yeah, I think
I like that.
that point at the end that you can sell, I think, is the real, like, you know, kicker there. So I completely agree with you. Like, something in a simpler terms, like something that no one's done before, but your own unique spin on it that you can sell, that you can put into the ether that is the world, and then, you know, make some money or anything off of it. I think that really is the definition.
Mm-hmm. I really like the definition that you've given of like creativity in general, of like putting some essence of imagination, some essence of yourself into something. Because I mean, it ties into my favorite art movements of like just Dadaism, which is like, fuck you, it's art because I say it is.
Yeah.
The general gist of it, God, do I love that. And then the addition of market is like that component of being able to sell it or to be able to get some sort of gain that will sustain you in life from that. It's a really good intersection when you can do both and actually live off doing both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That do be the dream, to live off it.
Yeah.
And I like how vast like the definition is as well, because like to someone the perfect, I mean, I'm in architecture, like the perfect bathroom could be art because you imagined exactly how it would be, but to normal people it'd be like, I go to the bathroom there. But it would still technically fall under like a creative market if you've added something of yourself in it. And I think that's really encouraging, you know, especially for people who can't like do the art market or something like that. Like you can still shine through in a broad scope, and I like it.
I agree completely. It doesn't have to be something like entirely new. Like, you're not looking to reinvent the wheel, because the wheel works perfectly fine, and I don't think there's a better shape, to be honest. But if you add
a square,
a wheel to do wheel things, I think a hexagon would lose that battle, unfortunately.
That's fair.
But even if you're not trying to reinvent the wheel, I think just like doing your own, like just your own spin on it, you know, maybe adding another dimension to make it a sphere instead of just a circle, you know. It doesn't need to be like the optimal best thing, but if you're doing your own spin on it, I think that's the real kicker.
Yeah, I think intent counts for a lot, and it ties back to what Lydia said of like, I think therefore I exist, or is it therefore I am? I've heard both.
Going back to that.
Where's the philosophy students, please?
Technically not a philosophy student, but you know, there are days where I wish I had not picked my major to be in economics. There are many days.
Isn't everyone a philosopher? Sorry, I'm like, I've literally had 2 friends that took the course, and I'm like trying to parrot back what they said.
I mean, back in
the general thought and intent.
First and second year, I took a bunch of. I love philosophy, but
Yeah, that's great.
it's terrible that a teacher ruined it for me because she.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a whole other story for another time because we do have
Another episode.
specific topics to get onto.
Yikes!
we should have
Drop that teacher's at.
Oh boy.
Oh, dude, it's a repressed memory for a reason. I don't want to remind myself of that teacher's name.
This is kind of a tangent, but we should have an episode on like university advice, particularly like picking universities and programs, because we're all
Ooh, true.
students and like high
Yeah.
school students. Like I
And we
wish
all
somebody
have
had told me.
regrets.
Yeah. Well, my sister just got into university, and I had a huge like discussion with her trying to decide which
Yeah.
university she wants to. So,
Mhm.
that'll be
Yeah, no,
great.
I'm down to do that. Like, I mentioned it earlier in our server, but I might be switching to weekly releases, so we'll definitely have room for more
Topics.
topics. That's the word. I literally just zoned out to look at my bracelet. This is like the 7th time that my ADHD has just been like hello in the middle of recording an episode.
Listen, bracelets are just so visually appealing. You know, it happens.
On that note, though, we have one more question to go. So if y'all are down, we can move on to it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I've switched off the screen. All right, so question number 5 is again 2 questions because it's sneaky. It is, what changes can Black, Indigenous people of color, I want to say and or LGBTQ plus and or women can make to the creative market, and what biases can be seen in it today?
I think each group of people can make intense and really good change in the creative market, and especially talking about like intersectionality, people bring different experiences to the table based on their own context and past life experiences, and I think it's really important to have people with those intersections their voices being heard in the market, because it's a completely unique perspective than the people currently dominating the market and that kind of stuff, and being able to just raise voices of other people and having those different experiences. It would be a huge change and it would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is where I out myself as an econ student a little bit. So I think like for me, like the biggest advantage I think of like increasing diversity and representation in like quote unquote creative markets is like a lot of these, creative markets are like intersected with like the development of a lot of like new products that are specific to these groups. Like if you look at like, they're even like, okay, full disclosure, like I'm not Black, right? But I like, even though these products are not targeted towards me, I've seen like, people who are running like businesses in their basement where they're creating like hair products for Black people. And I'm like, this is fantastic. Like I would never, and I suspect also white people would never be able to like, test like my own products on myself and like really stand behind my products like that. So I think like by increasing the representation in these markets, like you end up getting a lot of new products that like serve different parts of the community that might be underserved, because if we're, being honest, like the composition of like the larger companies aren't quite as representative as maybe they should be. So, that's what I'm excited about, to see a lot of these new products developed for, different communities.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, with the way things have developed over the past century, that the LGBTQ plus community and I don't want to butcher the acronym, but BIPOC, they're definitely a minority, and being a CIS male, I think it's unfortunate that when you realize it's so dominated by this CIS white male kind of stuff, and there's still all these problems that I don't want to say boomers typically, tend not to like. Like, I had a huge discussion. My parents own a small business, and I was talking to my mom about tattoos, and she said that, a lot of the people who are hiring now, if they see you're covered in tattoos, you're not going to get the job. But, that's, very boomer thinking. But, it's the same saying goes with a lot of, like, these minority communities. And I think it's definitely difficult with the bigger companies, but I think especially like the younger generations, like people our age, will appreciate it. Almost like it's almost like a double-edged sword, where it's like the older generation, it's seen as a negative because the olden days and stuff. But, our generation can really appreciate it more than the older gen.
I think. Sorry, go Lydia. I think with the diversification of like the market, and hopefully like our generation, I think, is starting to do a much better job than has been previously. We still got a lot of work to do, but building off that, having a more diverse market, I think, will get rid of, I'm going to call it the boomer rigidity of like, no, this is how things have to be. This is the way my father did it. This is the way everything like that. Like the old racist, homophobic, sexist, misogynistic tendencies of the market. I'm fucking hoping is being flushed out as a newer generation kind of takes the mantle, and as people with more intersections are becoming and like finally having the chance to climb in this market. I think it will improve a quality of life for so many people, because someone who has faced oppression and has been abused and face racism will not put people through the same thing. And I think those values that will become more relevant in the market as it's more diversified will be reflected in how companies treat their workers, how they treat customers, and like where they source their labor from. Like I think it will just become a generally more socialist market because we have empathy and there's more value placed on human life as opposed to profit. At least that's what I'm hoping will result from a diversified market, because just there's better values for people who have been through shit. And it's bad that they've been through shit, but it'll turn out. I've kind of lost my thing, but you know what I mean? I think it'll be a kinder, more empathetic market that values humanity over currency.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because you're essentially, like, as people, when you're living your life a certain way, you're applying your morals to every aspect of your life, right? And I know that some people do try and separate, different aspects of their life or different things into categories. For example, when people are like, oh, I like a musical artist and they are a horrible person, but I like their music, so I will listen to them, but I won't like support their actions. I feel like that line is getting a little blurry now, where people are not separating them as much, and that is coming to the market or the business world where, especially people in our generation, we don't want to work with people that are bad people just because they have good product or a good business plan, right? We want to work with people that are morally on the same page, that are treating other people well, that are here to add their values to their work, which just makes it better. So, putting together what Lydia was saying about representation, that's the reason why, even down to the very basic market of artists, I see, even because I make stickers, I see other people making stickers where they do characters of different skin tones, different looks. They have characters in wheelchairs. They have characters that represent different mental illnesses or disorders, because people are trying to normalize this. And I want to see more of that. I want to see that change continue to happen. And I do really think that it is going to happen because of exactly what, Jill, you're saying, where our generation is just having more empathy and a much better approach to it.
I love that, and I love to hear that. And it makes me think of a quote. I think it was a TikToker. I can't remember what his name was who said it, but he said, "The only thing forced about diversity is when there is none." It's like we are now finally actually, well, I'm not going to say we now are because we still have work to do, but like generally, we are now representing more groups of people who have always been there. They're finally getting some representation, and people are like, oh, like you're forcing diversity. It's like, no. The curtain has been drawn back. It's not just this whitewashed thing anymore. Like they're just getting they're being acknowledged now. Like people in wheelchairs never had stickers made of them until now, but they've always been there. And it's really nice to see that people are like, that it's becoming more normalized, even though it has been normal for like, well, not normal, but like, sorry.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think though, it's gonna take a little longer. I don't think it's gonna be our generation that's going to benefit from this.
Yeah.
It's going to be our kids if we, decide to have kids.
If the world lasts that long. That's a different topic. Sorry. I thought that's where you were going.
It's true.
Keep going.
No, but it's going downhill if I'm being completely honest. But, sometime I like to think that there is hope. But I'm taking a class called the psychosocial aspects of aging. And we spent, the first half of class talking about they call it the silver tsunami, which is like all the baby boomers who are in the industry now who are retiring, and how that's going to affect the industry and all that. And what's interesting is, they're all going to be moving out of, being these big corporations and stuff, and we're going to be filling their shoes. And so, as you say, we're going to include a lot more diversity, and it's not going to be this, whitewash bullshit that it is now. But I don't think it's going to be enough because we've been going, I don't say backwards, but we're making such slow progress over the past, I don't want to say like 30, 40 years. It's going to take some time to get them out of the rough. But I was talking with some of my friends from back home, and we were talking about politics, weirdly enough. And I think there should be an age limit for certain
yes
requirements. Yeah, I think it was talking with you guys on the server. Yeah, there has to be an age limit because the older people just, no offense to them, but they don't give a shit about us. They're driving off a cliff basically, and they don't care because they're gonna jump out and barrel roll halfway through. We're stuck in the back seat holding on to dear life. They're like, we need to,
I hate. Sorry, Lidia, you go.
I think I just have to put it on the record here. Like, I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you. I think, the difference between the older generation and us is, they were raised in a different time, and like, the experiences that they had growing up inform like their current beliefs, and for all the the things that I don't agree with them, and like certainly I think our generation generally is not very happy about, like, for instance, the fact that they did not address climate change, the fact that like they're the ones who pushed the era of Reaganism and like the small government movement that we disagree with. Like, of course we're gonna have our disagreements, but I think it still comes from a place that like they wanted to see the world to become a better place. They just had information that is, in my opinion, wrong. But I would really, really like to believe that, it's still coming from a place of like, this is, my country, or like, these are my people, and like, I am hoping for the best of them because, that's just what we do as a civil society.
Sorry. No, I completely agree with you. Because we talked about that in our course too. But the thing is, times have changed. The struggles that they were facing are, I don't want to say non-existent, but have vastly changed compared to us. Perfect example. My parents were both very poor, and they spent their time worrying about their day-to-day, like am I gonna have food on my table for dinner tonight? Compared to
Right.
us, at least in my case, thank God I've been very privileged to have, food on my table and stuff. But I haven't needed to worry about that. But I've dealt with my own struggles and stuff. And
Mhm.
so the times have changed so much. Like, I can't talk to my parents about, if I'm getting cyberbullied or anything, or if I'm having, like, my dad doesn't think mental illness is a thing. My dad doesn't think depression is a thing. Even though I've struggled with it, my sister struggled with it, and I'm pretty sure my brother struggled with it, but that's a whole other thing. But we've also, like, all of his kids have struggled with it, but he refuses to admit it's a serious mental illness. So, yes, they've dealt with their own struggles. I think they've done amazing things for their time, but times have changed so much that those things and those cemented beliefs are, I don't want to say ineffective, but they are not helping us.
Well, yeah. It goes back to what Jill was saying, right? Where like their generation has such a rigid way of thinking and a reason to like they stick to everything that they have been taught and don't really accept new information as well as our generation does. And that's one of the
Mhm.
issues, because I agree with Lydia in which you're saying, they believe they are doing what is right and hopefully have our best interests in mind. Because it's not like, they're all waiting for us to crash and burn, but they really believe, our way has worked for us, therefore it should
Mhm.
work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the difference is with our generation, we are a little more open to saying, even if this is working for us, it might not work for other people that I
Right.
do not have the same experiences as other people that are going to be in the world in the future. We're a little more
Mhm.
understanding and open to change. But
Mm-hmm.
we all,
Mhm.
I think, in general, at least, have the same idea of I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I can really
Yeah.
appreciate the optimism and faith of Lydia, of what you said, like of the good intent, and I just admire they
I
wanted to do good type thing, and I do believe it as well. But
I would go
some
a
days I
little
just can't.
further on the compassion thing. I think like I actually don't think there's a generational gap um in compassion. At least like I in the sense of like I don't know if our generation will be necessarily more on average open-minded than like, the baby boomers or our parents. And the reason I say this is because like, right now this is very much our generation. We grew up with these technologies, and I would argue that you're right. Our experiences are probably a lot more relevant in, what kind of problems we will be facing in the future that will become probably more and more pertinent. And that's great, but like there's, at the current moment obviously no experience that I have of like what we will be like when we are in our 60s, and there is a generation of 20-year-olds running around, and we disagree with them on a lot of things, like, and this is like, also because I am someone that believes very much in data. There's no data on any of this. Like I just kind of refuse to like categorically like label the entire generation of like, baby boomers to be like, you have no compassion. Like I really just think it's like, you know, you've lived with a certain set of experiences, and like they become, rules of thumb. When we talk about like all the good developments that we are doing, it's the same thing. It's just in a different direction. Like what we're doing is creating norms, and we have like a sense of ownership. And one day our kids probably will look at all of the norms that we've created and be like, you know what? This actually doesn't really work. We're going to try it another way. And I'm sure we're just going to be equally as mad, being like, oh my God, all this work that my generation put in to make this world a certain way is being torn up. Like I suspect this is like sort of like a reoccurring pattern in politics. Like if you look back, there's always this like generational cleavage because of this, I think anyways.
I agree and disagree with that. I think
Fair enough.
yes, 100% your experiences shape who you are, all that stuff. But I think, and there's always been this like political, cleavage, as you say. But I think with the way technology and the way the world is changing so fast compared to previous generations,
Right.
I think it's scaling and changing so fast that I don't think it's gonna be at the same rate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. But like, if you look at the rate of technological change, you're absolutely right. It has increased, right? Like the rate of acceleration, even I would argue, has increased. But that means that the gap between us and our children will be even greater than the gap between us and our parents.
I think Lydia's
Yeah.
perspective is a really important one to keep moving forward, because I think that will, like, inevitably we are going to look at the younger generation and be like, what the fuck? Like, I know when the Tide Pod challenge came out, I was like, what the?
Oh, I think we all collectively were
all
like,
of us were like, we're worried about this one. And that, I mean, that's only like 4 years away for, I don't know how old, like, that's a pretty small gap from us. And so, like Lydia said, like the vastness or the cleavage between generations will increase as time goes on, because the pace as to which things change is increasing as well. So I think maintaining that thought of like, oh yes, I probably will have the same biases towards the younger generation as I am facing right now, will allow us to kind of move on with a consciousness and an empathy. So when we find ourselves getting kind of old and bitter, we can be like, wait a minute. I know how this feels. Maybe I won't go down this path. Or like, maybe I'll try and take a breath and be like, hey, it's okay that they're not going through the same struggles that I had to go through. And just having that like vibe check of reality of like, hey, I know it kind of sucks, but I can be better by myself. I don't have to take it out on these kids. Or like, I find myself doing that with like, the curriculum is changed due to the complaints that my class has put in about like, and and I'm like, God damn it, these kids don't have to do like these 3 specific courses that I had to suffer through. And I'm like, a little bitter, but hey, you know what? They're gonna be great coming out of this. And I'm glad that they don't have to, like, it takes about a 20-minute stew, but then I'm glad that they don't have to go through the same thing that I did. You know?
Yeah. So we are like 3 minutes over. It's all good. I know that like an hour seems like a long time, but definitely when you're in discussion, it's just like, you know, I want it to keep going literally forever. This just further increases the chances that I am gonna do like a 2-hour special or something, because we're definitely like running with the time. So for today, I will have to end it there. But as per usual, if you guys want to say a goodbye, a cool little statement, a piece of advice for the audience, anything like that, feel free to throw in your last statements now.
I can go first. So I just want to bring this back to philosophy, because that was probably my favorite part of this talk today. It was overall very enjoyable, but that part made me, giggle a little bit on the inside. So the quote that we've been throwing around from Descartes, I think, therefore I exist. There's actually a better version that I think you guys will like even more. I can't remember. It's some postmodernist like author, but he wrote, I rebel, therefore I exist. And I quite enjoy that spin-off a little bit more.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I like that.
I think, at least for me, I think I'm gonna just go with a saying that I've at least tried to internalize, since it's from a video game, of course, being, the gamer, the quote unquote gamer that I am. And it's a voice chat line actually from Dota, and it's just relax, you're doing fine. Which is, I think, what everyone, needs from time to time. Just take a deep breath. Everything will work out. It will all be fine.
I love that. I think I'll close it out with be kind to yourself, and fuck it if someone doesn't let you.
Yeah.
That went sweet to spicy real fast.
Be kind to yourself, and fuck anyone who tells you that you can't.
Honestly.
I love it. All right. I want to thank you guys for coming on this episode, and of course, any future episodes that you're going to be on. Great discussions all around, super passionate, lovely people that I get to be friends with. And on the other side, thank you so much to whoever for some reason listens to this because you have nothing better to do with your day. We're here for you. We will represent you. And if you are disagreeing with any of us, or you hate us, or you want to leave a nice comment on the other side, just comment below, like the video, share it with your friends. Check out the website for the business, littledaggeraesthetics.com. Make an account. I'm losing my words. Make an account. You can get exclusive deals for sales in Shop LDA and with all of our partners. If you got a small business, list with us. I'm pretty sure this episode will be posted before the end of 2021. So you can get a free year. And then after that, it's literally $5 a year, which is so cheap because I don't know how to price things properly. And I just want to help people and be affordable. Other than that, look forward to the next episode, and be sure to look out for the Instagram polls and places that you can comment what you want to hear on these podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.